Okay, so welcome to our next episode. I'm absolutely happy to have Esther Choundary join us today on the Blueprints for Success episode. So, welcome. Esther, it's absolutely wonderful having you here. But before we go into some of the work conversation, maybe you can tell us a little bit about you and a little bit around your background.
Thank you, Deidre. I'm truly honored to be on this podcast with you. I'm located in United States, based in Carmel City of Indiana. I have both a bachelor's and master's degree in computer science. And I think it was when I was in seventh grade, computer science was made part of our curriculum at that time. And that's when I had my first encounter with the computer, the big box computer. And ever since, I wanted to become a software engineer, and so I did. So, right after finishing my master's, I started my journey in software development at a startup company back in India. And as you may know, one of the biggest benefits of working in a startup software development company is that you get to experience every stage of the software development life cycle. And at a very early stage in my career, I got the opportunity to see the big picture of how a company operates, be it business development, client partner management, human resource management, revenue generation, coding, conflict management. I did learn a lot more than what I could have learned if I worked for a large sized company. And I'm very thankful for that part of my career. I moved into business systems analysis role, where the role comprises of both business analysis and systems analysis. I grew into lead consultant roles, which were more transformative and cross-functional in nature. But what navigated me to business architecture was that when I used to work on initiatives as a business consultant, it came naturally to me to be very inquisitive about the why. Why are we doing this? What if we did it this way? Have we explored other options? What is the value? Like, how does this align with our objectives and goals? How does this benefit our customers? I was always trying to see the forest for the trees. And there have been instances where I received nudges from the people I worked with saying, the questions you ask are beyond your scope of work. Those are business architecture questions. You should really consider business architecture. And at that point in time, I was actually doing business architecture without knowing that there was something called business architecture. So I quickly joined the guild, the Business Architecture Guild, to know more about business architecture and started to build my knowledge base, knowledge on business architecture, what it entails, what the role is about. And I became so passionate about this discipline. I made a goal to get certified so I can advance this discipline within my organization. I also created a vision for what business architecture could do for my organization and started to socialize the value and the role itself. Now, thankfully, I had the privilege of spearheading transformative strategic initiatives that exposed the value of business architecture within the company and helped gain more champions and advocates for the role. And that exponentially increased the pace of establishing this discipline and establishing the need for business architecture, and hence paving the way to hire more business architects in the future. Now, it's intriguing to see that when what you do influences change and decisions, it becomes highly attractive, right? So I've had many coworkers reach out to me and ask how they can become business architects, what skills do they need to possess to become a business architect. Now, what we were able to achieve within such a short span, I don't think it would have been possible without having leadership support, the champions that we have, the advocates, and most importantly, our business architecture community. And I just finished a year-long business architecture cohort, and the experience was invaluable. The support I received the experiences that were shared, and those were priceless. And when I look at the journey so far, and there was something about championing, it was contagious. It's this act of people championing for me led me to champion for many around me, sometimes even without them knowing. That leads me to the quote I love. It says, "You rise by lifting each other up." And I saw depth in that quote. So I started to understand that quote. What does it truly mean? And I learned that success is not how you've climbed, how high you've climbed, but how you've inspired others and made a positive difference around you. Now, I'm nowhere near that mark of success, but I'm grateful to have the opportunity to coach and mentor other business consultants and business architects, not just within my company, but outside the organization as my way of giving back to the community.
That's awesome. That's a wonderful story. I'm going to roll back to two questions. Firstly, as a young lady that was interested in computer science, that's quite unusual. I come from a similar interest in computer science, and I know I was the only female. So I don't know if it was different for you at the time, or was it very male dominated, or how did
It,
it
it
work?
came, it came naturally to me, and the analytical brain that I have, I think it got attracted to the algorithms and that you build. It was a
Yeah.
food for my
It's like a puzzle,
analytical
right?
brain.
Yeah. Yeah. So were you in a class with males and females, or was it just something of self-interest from your perspective?
Yeah, and for some weird reason, when I got drawn to computers, I was so intrigued by it, how it works. And by nature, I was a very inquisitive person, like even from childhood, through childhood. I used to watch everything and try to figure out how it works. If you see a
Yeah.
bulb, I used to think about, okay, how does it work? And computers was something like I used to break open the computer, and it was a desktop computer at that time. So I used to
Yeah.
break open, I used to see all the wires and try to take away the wires and
Oh,
then put them
wow.
back in. And yeah, there was something about computers that I was drawn to. And I never deterred from that perspective or from that goal.
Mm, that's great. And I suppose when you look at your transition from business analyst to business architect and now leading and helping and coaching, did you find that the skills that you had gathered in the business analysis, obviously the computer science space, became a very natural transition into architecture, or was it something completely new that you were looking at? In other words, did you just go, oh, this makes so much sense, I'm just going to do this? Or did you go, oh, I need to explore this a little bit more, I don't really understand this area? What was your experience?
I think it was a combination of many things. So when you look at business architecture as a competency, so I see it as three aspects. One is behaviors, the second one is skill set, and the third is your knowledge, right?
Mm,
So when you look at business architecture as a whole, you would have key behaviors that you would need to demonstrate to be successful in your role. So in my mind, there are five behaviors that are crucial for the success of a BizArc. One is deep listening, be curious, right? Be inquisitive. And that's something that helped me. I was always curious as a child. So that definitely helped me. And being an active listener, seeking to understand. Number two is building great working relationships. I was always good at talking to people, making friends, and collaborating with people. And that strengthened my abilities as well from that perspective. The third behavior is empathy. being able to understand your customer is important if you want to drive effective business solutions for your company, right?
Mm.
So that's something that I deeply care about as a person. I'm a more people person. I'm sensitive to the pains that our customers have, our agents have. So that helps me, that motivates me more to bring more value for the organization. And the fifth one is being adaptable. And
Mm.
business architecture, in my mind, is not limited to IT or technology or a certain business area, right? You could apply this discipline to anything that is
Yeah.
transformational or strategic in nature. And that's the true power of this role. And
Mm.
you may be put in efforts where you're not familiar, or you're not familiar in that area. You don't have knowledge over that area. You've never done it before, but being able to adapt, right? And this is where my curiosity kicks in, where I'm like, I'm now curious about, okay, let me learn this. And that's how you build your knowledge base. Now, speaking about skill sets, having that, like I mentioned when I was introducing myself, having that big picture mindset truly helps, because the scope of business architecture is not just a business area, right? Not a business function, but it's more the organization as a whole. So having that big picture mindset is critical. And the ability to ask insightful questions, ability to provide that analytical intelligence, right? And storytelling, ability to communicate, tell your story, help articulate strategy for the leaders. And those are the skill sets that I was able to learn through my career and in my journey. There were, if you look at my career as a journey, you have highs and you have lows,
Yeah.
right? And both teach you something. And in my career, the highs taught me humility and the lows helped me grow. And no matter which end of the curve I was in, I was still learning.
Yeah.
Now, coming back to the third aspect of the bizarre competency, it's knowledge, right? Having domain knowledge. If you're in a financial industry, you learn about the industry, right? If you're in banking industry, you learn about banking. If you're in the insurance industry, you learn about insurance. So having that domain knowledge pays when you're in this role. And also, and going back to curiosity, right? Be curious about learning. So I read a lot about what's going on in the world around me. What are the technological trends that are going on? Harvard Business Review, MIT Sloan Management Review, McKinsey Insights. And there are a lot of other valuable resources out there free of cost on
Yes.
LinkedIn itself that
Yeah.
you can read to build your knowledge base.
Mm. I agree with you. We need to understand what we need to learn. I think that's a big thing, and there's lots of opportunities to learn, and we also need to learn to unlearn because things change.
Yes.
So, and that's quite difficult because sometimes you have to keep going and doing things that you didn't think you would be doing in the beginning. So you have now really looked at mentoring and coaching in the business architecture and business analysis field. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? What is I think you've explained some of your motivation behind it, but what is your approach? What triggered it? When did it happen? How did it happen? And so forth.
One of the best advice that I got from someone in my at the start of my career was, if you want to be successful in your career, find a mentor. And that was the advice that was provided to me. Every organization that I work in, every role that I'm in, I managed to find a mentor who could mentor me. And so I did. I found mentors across my journey, all through my journey. And I'm fortunate to have amazing mentors who have guided me all through my career. And when I say mentor, uh, a mentor to me, the way I define it, is someone who will walk with you throughout your career, through your career, providing guidance and advice. And I'm grateful to have an amazing mentor who guides me, who celebrates my wins, who hears me out when I'm down, and who navigates through challenges for me.
Mm,
And that, similar to championing, right? That led me to be a good mentor for others around me. So my approach is not to show them the way. It's more about walking with them, hearing them out, listening to them, provoking thoughts in their minds so they can, to enable them in a way that they can figure things out.
mm. That is a hard skill, actually. I don't think people realize that mentoring can be really like it's something you have to, because you always have to hold back when you're mentoring. It's not as if you can just go, here's the answer. This is what you should do. It's actually quite difficult because you've got to let the person discover, but you might be at some point just go, just do this, or this is your answer. How do you manage that?
I think I've learned from the best because the mentor that I have today is so articulate, so amazing at what she does. And it's not just mentorship. There are two other roles that played a significant role in my career, the sponsor role. I've had the privilege to have a sponsor in my life where, and the way I define sponsor is a person who will mention your name in a room full of opportunities.
Mm,
And I've done that for people whom I mentor. I've
mm,
tried to be their sponsor, their abilities more than anyone would in the organization. And you know where they can be of value in the organization. So that and all this, I think I have to give it to the culture that I have in my organization. It's amazing what true leadership, good leadership can do to the employees that are working in the organization. And I've been inspired by great leaders who don't show me the way, but show how it's done so
mm,
I can emulate them.
mm,
So all
mm.
credit to them.
That's great to be in that environment because uh, some people don't get those opportunities, but it's wonderful to hear. And that you are, what's the term? Paying it forward, which is even better, taking it and helping the next group. All right. So, are there any key experiences or turning points that shaped your career?
I think, like I mentioned, the three roles that played, I talked about mentorship, having a mentor, having a sponsor. The third role that played a crucial role in my career was having advocates. Now, advocates are those who see your value and spread the word within the organization, right? And to be honest, these are people who see the value, and it's like when people see value, it goes viral, right? It's like word of mouth marketing. And
Yeah.
advocates do just that. And I've had the
Mm,
privilege to have advocates where they share the good word with people they know, and they created more opportunities for me within the organization.
mm. It's interesting because one of the CEOs that I worked with, he said there's only two things he worries about, and one is reputation and one is revenue. And so that reputation and building that community really is an important, and that's what you're saying. It's almost like marketing without marketing, is building that reputation at the end of the day.
And
No, go.
also, I've learned quickly in my career that, like I said, success is not about you just climbing higher. It's also about, and there's an article I read about where it's not, you don't climb higher just by your performance alone, right? It's how many people you've helped in the organization. What's your capital within the organization? How
Mm.
many opportunities did you create for others? And that's stuck with me all through my career.
That is a very good point because it helps others. Yeah, it's again that community and ensuring that your community is well fed, looked after. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you see business architecture? What's the importance of business architecture in today's organizations? Why do we have it? Why does it matter? What's your perspective?
Now, every organization has goals, and understanding of what their ambition is, right? But there's a gap between ambition and action, and that's where things get blurry. We often call it strategy. So when you look at the world around us, the fast pace of innovation, changing environmental conditions, or rising digitalization, or changing economic conditions, these are the factors, or some of the factors, that influence how an organization adapts or responds to these circumstances, and thus formulating strategies around it. Now, business architecture is a role that fits perfectly to help navigate through strategy and execution. Now, a capability view of the organization provides the right level of abstraction to help formulate strategy or even navigate through transformation or disruption. And this role naturally provides analytical frameworks, right, that helps draw meaningful insights for decision making to help ensure that we're solving the right problems or we're focusing on the right opportunities. Now, there's an interesting article on McKinsey. It says, beware of solving for enterprise multiples instead of value creation.
Hmm.
Now, multiples are the result of good outcomes, right? But they're not the primary objective. Now, business architecture at its best, it helps protect against the value traps.
Mm.
Now, and hence business architecture is that bridge that aligns execution to ensure that the outcomes are aligning with our strategic objectives.
Mm. And would you say that if we look at architecture, businesses understand that value? Because that's the other problem, right? Um,
And
it sounds like a fancy word, but it's not truly well understood because that's part of the barrier in really being able to cross that bridge in action.
one of the key challenges that we face in the business architecture world is that the stakeholders understand our value, the value that we provide. If you engage a BizArc in an initiative, right, it runs more smoothly. It's more clearer. The outcomes are more clearer, right? But oftentimes we see that because this is a newer discipline and not as established as enterprise architecture or business analysis, solution architecture, data architecture, we struggle with being ways,
Communication.
find ways where a BizArc can be helpful, where a BizArc should be plugged in, right?
Yeah.
And a few more challenges that we face is that oftentimes a business architect is misconstrued to be a glorified
Yeah.
business analyst. We're super BAs, is
Yeah.
what they call. And don't get me wrong, business analysis is a very important role, and it's just different. It's just
Mm.
different from business architecture in many ways. So we're continuing to socialize the role within our organization and bring more clarity on how business architecture integrates with other disciplines within the organization. The other challenge that we face is, by nature, business architects are great storytellers. It's part of our DNA, right? We're good at consuming large amounts of data, large amounts of information, and condense it in a way that is easy to understand. And of course, the output is more prettier. Now, it becomes a challenge when this skill set is mischaracterized as being great at producing deckware or visuals, while missing the key attribute, which is our strategic storytelling nature of our work.
Hmm. That's really interesting. And I see that there is the storytelling, as you mentioned, is a key part because of the audiences. The often I've in a couple of these sessions we speak about how to speak to different audiences, and being able to explain it in a way that's their language would be super important, obviously, to some people. I have a personal question for you. How do you like to communicate? What is your preference? If somebody came to you and there was a project coming on, what would you like to hear? What information would you expect in a project?
I would ask three questions primarily. Who's your audience?
Mhm.
What do you want the audience to feel? What do you want the audience to do after they hear your story? So that I start with that because that draws out your intentions and your that extrapolates what story do you want to actually tell the audience. And every story has a level of abstraction, right? There's if it's a story for the board of directors, then it's a higher altitude, right? If it's senior leadership, then it's at a certain altitude, right? So you would need to speak at that particular level and be able to articulate in their language, right? So if you're talking to a technical guy, then your story is slightly different, right? Because the answers that he's looking for in your story are quite different from a
Mm,
person on the business side who does not understand technical aspects of things, and they might want to be told in a different way.
mm, mm. All right. So the next question I have for you is, how do you see the field of business architecture evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? Are there any specific trends or shifts you anticipate? And do any of those include AI or architecture toolkits? What are your thoughts about that?
I think the pace of change is only going to increase in the future. Like the rising need to be more efficient and productive due to changing economic conditions, the need to be more digitally enabled, the rise of AI, right? All such trends require organizations to improve business agility and have faster decision making in order to stay competitive in the industry. And that's where business architecture skill set becomes crucial because that's the role that provides you that analytical intelligence required to architect effective business solutions that align with your strategic objectives, right? Especially with AI, the need for business architect who can connect the dots for an organization is only rising. And like to be able to identify the areas within the organization where you could benefit from AI, assess the viability of AI, measuring value, ROI of AI. All these aspects are crucial to move in the right direction. I see a lot more people curious about this discipline. The business architecture cohorts are filling up. There are multiple courses coming in on business architecture. How do you master business architecture? How do you set up a strategic business architecture discipline in an organization? And that's great progress. You have educational institutions that are incorporating business architecture into their curriculum, like I saw in Penn State. They have business architecture as a course. That's progress, right? And probably what I do for the community is a teeny tiny drop in the ocean, and we need more drops in the ocean.
And do you think that understanding architecture, let's talk about the architecture knowledge base a little bit. So, for instance, we talk about our capabilities, we talk about our value streams, we talk about the the knowledge that exists within the organization. And this doesn't always have to be explicit data. It doesn't always have to be like a capability is quite abstract. It's a conceptual idea. Do you think that having architecture is an important feed into AI? Because a lot of businesses might think, oh, we'll just take all of the data that we have captured over the last however many years and feed that into AI. But I see that as a little bit of a problem. What are your views around architecture and AI knowledge bases? What is your perspective?
I think we have a lot of AI solutions that are coming up in the industry. Multiple versions of AI solutions in technology world today, right? And not everything may apply to your organization, right? Not everything would provide the same ROI, same value that it's providing to the other organizations, right? So it depends on how mature you are in your technical landscape, how mature you are in your business approaches or in your business capabilities.
Yeah.
What's the health of your business capabilities? And all of this plays an important role in determining whether a certain AI solution truly would provide the
Add
value that
value.
you're
Mm,
looking for in that AI solution. And
mm,
that's where business architects, they have that blueprint in their toolkit. They
mm,
will be able to identify based on the health of your business capabilities, they will be able to identify, hey, these are your areas where you can utilize AI to gain more efficiencies, or you
mm.
can use AI in these areas to generate more revenue and identify those opportunities for the organization where AI could be more beneficial and would give you the biggest bang for the buck.
Yeah, I agree with you. It allows you to categorize things and put them in order. So it's not as much
Right.
chaos
Right.
as all of the data that we're trying to feed into it.
We have actually performed effort value analysis to identify the true value, to identify whether we're getting the ROI that we're looking for in this solution.
Nice. So when you say that, what do you mean? Is it like a tool that you're using, or is it just a kind of what is it?
Business architecture has many tools, and oftentimes, and this goes back to adaptability, right? Sometimes it's just a white paper. Like you just have to figure out what tools to use to to answer the questions that need to be answered.
All right. So my next question to you is, in your current role, what are some of the key challenges and opportunities that you're working on?
So, in my role as a principal business architect, one of my primary responsibilities is to establish the business architecture discipline within the organization. And establishing business architecture in an organization is an evolutionary process, and it's not an easy road, right? So, the goal of business architecture from my lens was to eventually become trusted advisors for the leaders within the organization. And if I were to put phases to the business architecture's evolution process, you have the influencer phase, where you start to influence transformational changes, build your business architecture knowledge base, build your baseline, and then you move into your enabler phase, where you help enable transformations, you facilitate strategic conversations, you help derive actionable initiatives. And then comes the final stage, then maybe the most difficult stage, and that's to be the trusted advisor. And that's where you are seen as a strategic partner whom the leader relies on for strategic advice. You have a seat at the table when strategy is being formulated. So we plowed through our way from being influencers and enablers. We started off with using business architecture for value, using business architecture in certain transformational business scenarios, spearheading capability assessments, strategic assessments, and building our capability views and more. Now, we're now inching our way into that trusted advisor role, and we're not there yet. We're still inching into more of the strategic realm of things. We've successfully facilitated strategy sessions for certain areas of the business, helping them derive strategic direction, actionable initiatives, a strategic roadmap. And when I think of the whole business architecture value, right? The it's in the form of, I picturize this value of business architecture in the form of a diamond, where you have facets, right, that help tune the value. You have the crown on the top, and then you have the pavilion. So there are 6 facets that I feel that derive the value of business architecture. Number one is, like we talked about, the business architecture knowledge base, right? So you have the blueprints, you have the frameworks, and then you have used business architecture for value, right? Identifying opportunities where BizArcs can be leveraged and utilized. Now you have governance and operations where you're establishing standards and governance models. So we're formulating engagement models, playbooks, the standardizing framework so it can be reused, and all that. Now, when you look at the pavilion, the 3 facets there are leadership sponsorship. Now, without this, it would be extremely difficult to draw out the value of the discipline. And you have organizational positioning. You could be in IT or you could be in the business, on the business side. Both have their pros and cons, right? And then you have advocacy and engagement where you socialize your business architecture skill, role, and value. And I say all this to say that we're working to tune every facet of these 6 things, each of these 6 facets, step by step to truly draw out the value of business architecture within the organization.
Mm. That's great. And that must be a hard job. That can't be easy.
It's not. A
Um,
lot of things need to fall in place to be able to move forward in the right direction. And I have to give credit to my leadership who believe in this discipline, and also my co-workers who are business relationship directors in the company who partner with us, and we complement each other to help solve business problems for our organization.
that's really wonderful. It's great to see businesses really starting to embrace. And I'm sure you know as well that this wasn't characteristic a few years ago. This is something that has occurred over the last few years. I'm not sure exactly, but I've certainly seen the growth myself, which has been great. Previously, not so much. All right. So, Esther, could you perhaps share a project or initiative where business architecture played a critical role? And what were the key challenges and outcomes that came from that?
I can provide many examples where business architecture played and continues to play a crucial role in my organization. And one such example pertains to how business architecture helped facilitate digital transformation strategy within my organization. And as the scope of digital transformation in any organization is not typically limited to a business area, but the organization as a whole. Now, if I could use an analogy here, we all know what a dot puzzle is, right? So when we were kids, we have this dots which has numbers beside it, and then you start to connect the dots, and then it draws out a picture for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, imagine the dots are strategic decisions that we're making across the organization. And you need someone to actually connect the dots to ensure that we're carving the right picture. right? And that's what a business architect does. We connect the dots. So in my example, it was the business architect's role to collaborate with the guiding coalition, which is a cross-functional group of leaders, to capture the business needs and capabilities that we wish to mature or create new in the future, and also assess the capabilities in a way that produces analytical intelligence required to make effective decisions. So, be it identifying capabilities that move the needle the most, that has the highest impact in the organization, measure the interdependencies between capabilities, heat map the capabilities based on multiple dimensions, ask insightful questions for stakeholders to think beyond their area of expertise. And it's very common for divisional leaders to think within the realms of their accountability, but we as Bizards help bridge that gap.
Mm.
So going back to the dot puzzle analogy, the business architect was able to connect the dots of the business across business areas into something that is more connected, cohesive, and meaningful. So this helped us to architect enterprise-centric business solutions as opposed to siloed solutioning, right? This also helped us be more effective in our investment decisions that solves not just for a certain business area, but for the enterprise as a whole.
I love that connecting the dots and the fact that you called those dots. And I know Roger speaks about the dots as well, but the fact that you called them the decisions, that was like that makes so much sense, because we often talk about in data the wisdom pyramid, where you've got data, information, knowledge, and then decisions, basically,
Right.
or wisdom. So that makes a lot of sense, that you make sure that the decisions that are being made are actually aligned to each other in some way. Yeah, that's wonderful. All right. So, Esther, could you share some advice or lessons learned for professionals entering or growing their careers in business architecture, particularly, but anyone who's looking to grow their career?
Absolutely. I would say four things. Number one, focus on building your competence. Number two, get certified. Number three, become part of the community. There are business architecture cohorts. There are communities like Women in Architecture. There are business architecture guild communities. Become part of those communities so you can learn from others' experiences. And number four, focus on building good relationships, because I think this aspect would be very crucial for the success of a business architecture role within the organization.
Hmm. I would definitely agree with that. A lot of people think training does it all. It's just one very important part of the puzzle in building a career. So that's some great advice. Now, Esther, I have the most difficult question for you. And that is, if you could go back in time and give yourself, your younger self, one piece of advice at the start of your career, what would it be?
I think that's a very tough question. And I would say dare to dream. I think we as women, we limit our aspirations and dreams on who we want to become professionally. And I would say keep trying. Keep trying new things. If you haven't tried, you failed already, right? So I would give myself that advice.
It's fantastic advice. Thank you, Esther. I think that has been a really insightful session. I think there's a lot of learning to come out of this session, and the insights that you've given, shared, and especially the storytelling for me, connecting those dots. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, what is the best way in which to do that? What would you, is it LinkedIn? Is it something else?
I'm available on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to reach out, feel free to do so. And thank you for having me. It was such a joy speaking with you and telling you my story.
Yes, it was wonderful hearing from you. So thank you very much. You've heard now that you can reach Esther on LinkedIn, which is great. All right. Thanks so much, Esther. And that's been awesome.